Hi again. Another book about the wartime special duties units. And today we're going to look at the biography of one of the agents, a British officer who worked with the French resistance to set up networks and to take the fight to the Germans in the occupied territories. Now, the structure of SOE was very complicated. It had several sections that operated into France. I think there were four. And I previously reviewed this book, and one of the things in it that I didn't really mention was the organizational diagrams in here, pages of it, that illustrate how SOE was organized at various stages of the war. And I've found this an invaluable resource. It's also got a list of all the training establishments and the senior officers. Again, invaluable when you're putting together stuff on the history. So attacking France, they had F section, which was Maurice Buckmaster for most of the war. The Fighting French, or RF, DF, which was the escape side of it, and EUP, which was Poles operating into France, because there was a Polish community. So the agent that we're going to be talking about was a member of Fighting France, or RF. So this was the section that was working directly to the exiled French government in London. And this is the book, Bravest of the Brave, and it's the story of Wing Commander Tommy Yeo Thomas. His full name, Forrest Frederick Yeo Thomas, SOE agent, codename White Rabbit, by Mark Seaman, who's quite a noted historian. There was a previous book, which was an authorized biography written not too long after the war by Bruce Marshall, who was in the intelligence and analysis side of SOE. And he got the story more or less from the horse's mouth. And together they're two really, really good books. And if ever anyone deserved books written about him, it was Tommy, or Yeo Thomas. It might be thought he was an unlikely type to be an agent because he had worked in Paris before the war, running a fashion house with fashion models, mannequins, and things like this. But he was obviously completely fluent in French and could pass as a Frenchman. He joined the RAF, but that was more or less just a cover for his activities with SOE and Section RF. He entered France usually by parachuting no less than 3 times. So he went in, came back, went in, came back, and then went in a 3rd time. And there was some debate whether he should go back the 3rd time, but he himself insisted. And he was compromised on his 3rd mission. And he was captured by the German security people, the Sicherheitsdienst, or commonly known as the Gestapo. In the books, particularly in the first book, they didn't really differentiate between the different arms of the Nazi machine, but it was more likely to be the SD. And he was brutally tortured. He was beaten. He was hung from hooks, beaten with rubber coshes all over his body, including his genitals, and he was drowned in freezing cold baths. And during that time, he kept to his cover story, his cover name. And they sent him to Buchenwald concentration camp, still under the cover name of Dodkin, and they didn't crack him at all. So he he was supposed to be killed in Buchenwald. He swapped identities, managed to survive, and at the end made his way and encountered the American forces coming forward, and gave them a full report of what had happened at Buchenwald, and offered to lead them back to attack the camp or liberate the camp. He gave evidence against the guards and the people who ran Buchenwald. But then, after the war, there was a trial of Otto Skorzeny, the SS commando leader, who was on trial because his men had adopted Allied uniforms or American uniforms during the Ardennes campaign, and this was regarded as a war crime. And Yeo Thomas actually gave evidence on his behalf. So for somebody who'd been tortured by a branch of the SS to give evidence to support a member of the Waffen-SS was remarkable, but it shows the kind of guy he was. And the book has many, many interesting photographs, one of which you possibly see here is of his knuckle duster, his penknife, and his identity tag for France. And the love of his life was Barbara, and they managed to continue their relationship after the war. So absolutely remarkable story. I read the first book, The White Rabbit, when I was quite young. It was one of the war books that it was published in 1952. It was one of the wartime books I read. I was reading a lot of this stuff, and obviously at that early age I was impressed. But I must admit I'm even more impressed by the story of Tommy now, a man who the SD couldn't break with all their torture methods. And the word hero is overused, but he was a hero. He received quite a few decorations, as you might expect, and the RAF actually forbade him to wear the French Croix de Guerre on his uniform because they hadn't given permission, and there was all this nonsense. This is during the war, right, when you think they'd have more important things to worry about than things about the uniform. But that's the mind of a lot of service senior officers. But I would urge anyone to get hold of either of those two books and read them, because there are few stories as impressive as his.